Chairman, you have 1 minute. 1 minute. I'd like to call, before I do, after that rather, I want to get, if I can get a motion to approve. Oh, I thought I was on.
You're good. Just keep going.
Okay. Did they hear what I said already? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Commissioner Guerrero, motion to approve the agenda.
A second?
Commissioner Smith, a second.
Becky?
Board Member Smith?
Yes.
Board Member Vega?
Yes.
Board Member Guerrero?
Yes.
Board Member Kaiser?
Yes.
Chair Gordon?
Yes. All right. Is there any one who has a conflict of interest for tonight? If not, okay. I need a motion to approve the agenda. I'm sorry, the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Need a second?
I'll second it.
But before we do that, is there any corrections? If not, I have one. At the top of the minutes, they have the date, Becky, of December 28th. Should be January. You'll correct that? Okay. Are there any other corrections? All right, seeing none, can I vote, please?
Board Member Guerrero?
Yes.
Board Member Vega?
Yes.
Board Member Smith?
Yes.
Board Member Kaiser?
Yes.
Chairman Gordon?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, now, is there anyone here this evening who wishes to address an item that is not on the agenda this evening? You may have the opportunity to speak. You can please raise your hand if you do. All right, seeing none, then we'll move on. All right, on the agenda, we have 3 postponements. The reason that they are there is additional information that staff requires, and because these items have been advertised, they have been brought to the agenda, but I'm going to have to figure out what is going to be best in order to postpone this. What I'd like to do is to get a motion, if it's agreeable to staff, that we postpone this to make a date of your approval. Catherine?
Commissioner, members of the commission, that would be fine. We could state it that way and be more generalistic, or we could actually postpone these to a date certain. And I would recommend for next month's meeting, which is March. I actually don't have that in front of me. Let me look at a calendar.
I just don't want to make it a date certain if we still have the same problem.
Yes, I mean, we always run into that. It is possible that we would advertise and then have to postpone again.
So you want to make it a date certain?
I would prefer to make it a date certain. If we do it indefinitely, you could kill the project.
Okay. So could you tell me what that date is in March?
Let me look on my calendar. Bear with me one moment.
That would be the 22nd.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, then can I get a motion to postpone these items till the March 22nd Planning and Zoning meeting?
Mr. Gordon, what exactly are we postponing?
Items 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3. All right, can I get a, all right, Becky? Can I get a motion, please?
Can we briefly clarify which three items? You said 5.1, 5.2, and then I'm looking at, I guess, an old agenda that would be,
Right, well, there's been an amended agenda, so it would be 5.3, 5, 1, 2, and 3.
I'll make a motion to postpone items 5.1, 5.2, 5.3 until the meeting March 22nd.
Yes. I need a second, please.
I'll second it.
Board Member Guerrero?
Yes.
Board Member Vega?
Yes.
Board Member Smith?
Yes.
Board Member Kaiser?
Yes.
Chair Gordon?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, then we can move on to the consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this item? If not, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda item 6.1?
Commissioner Guerrero, I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda.
A second?
Board Member Guerrero?
Yes.
Board Member Vega?
Yes.
Board Member Smith?
Yes.
Board Member Kaiser?
Yes.
Chair Gordon?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, and next we move to old business. There are items 7.1, 7.2, and 7.3 are under old business. What I'd like to do is to discuss but vote separately on items 7.1 and 7.2. So I need a motion to do that. We can make a motion to combine 7.1 and 7.2 to discuss separately, but to vote on each one. I'm sorry, we can discuss them together, but we can vote on them separately.
I make a motion to combine 7.1 and 7.2 and vote on them separately.
Commissioner Smith, I second.
Board Member Guerrero?
Yes.
Board Member Vega?
Yes.
Board Member Smith?
Yes.
Board Member Kaiser?
Yes.
Chair Gordon?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we have a presentation from staff.
Bear with me while I get this opened. All right. Catherine Harrison Rogers with staff. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the Bumblebee Learning Center Master Plan and corresponding zone changes. This particular property is vacant and undeveloped. It's about 5.5 acres. It's located just west of Holman Road and north of Bataan Memorial West, with direct access off of Bataan Memorial West. It's currently zoned R2. Here is a map indicating, it's a little hard to see with that tan, but there's the yellow line surrounding that. It's an odd shape, and that's the parcel that we're discussing today. Here's an aerial. It's a little bit more clear about where the parcel lies. What they're proposing is both a master plan and then corresponding zone changes to align with that master plan. 4.12 or thereabouts is the acreage that's proposed to be modified from R2 to C3. Commercial zoning districts would ultimately front Bataan Memorial West, with the multifamily dwelling residential land uses closer to that Holman Road side. There are some conditions that have been proposed by the applicant, one of which is new. One is that the land is limited, the uses are limited to the uses specified in attachment number 3, and that's specifically for the C3 properties. You also received a handout this evening indicating what those uses are. Additionally, there are limits to the building heights that require that the buildings can't be higher than 35 feet. This is phased, ultimately, if these are to be approved. This would be developed in individual lots via the alternate summary subdivision process, which is an administrative process. They're proposing no more than 3 parcels. Ultimately, during staff review, this met the requirements of the subdivision code, the design standards, and the zoning code as amended. Just so you have a clear picture of what's going on, the proposed C3 uses, which are those high-intensity commercial uses, would be located essentially in this area. And then the existing R2 would remain. That's the multifamily uses in this area. Staff did send out public notice, and there were also some other methods of public notice that occurred during this process. Notice was sent to surrounding properties prior to the P&Z meetings of December. This was heard before, and then, of course, of this meeting tonight. Early notification was also sent by the applicant, and I'll let the applicant speak to what occurred at that meeting if you would like input regarding that. And city staff did receive input from the public via phone as well as email, speaking about any future commercial development and ultimately any nuisances or impacts that could occur as part of that. Would like to point out that the DRC, the Development Review Committee, also did review this plan December 8th, 2021, specifically the master plan, not necessarily the zoning, and that was recommended for approval. I do want to speak to what occurred during the December 28th, 2021 P&Z meeting. During that time, there was a lot of input, both from the commission as well as from the public. Ultimately, some of the biggest commission concerns were in regard to access easements leading to any future lots. And then the lack of the details in terms of site development. There was an interest in really seeing sort of the fine details. And I'm going to speak a little bit to where we are in the process and why perhaps those details aren't provided. The public also spoke at length regarding their concerns about increase in traffic, the potential for increased crime, building heights being too high for the area, issues regarding solid waste pickup, and ultimately nuisances that could come along with that. Concerns about new lighting that may be problematic, noise, land values, and then buffering. There were a couple of other comments, of course, but those were the highlights. Some of the modifications that came about as part of that were to the plan, to the master plan in particular, and as well as a proposed condition. Hearing that there were some concerns about maybe having some buildings that were too large, blocking views, things of that nature, the applicant did propose a condition upon themselves to limit heights to 35 feet. That would be in keeping with the same height limits that all of the other surrounding properties currently have. Additionally, there was some added language on the master plan regarding both internal and external access, as well as some detailed information regarding the traffic assumptions at that location. I do want to speak a little bit about the development process and kind of where we are or where the applicant is in terms of the process right now. We're just at the beginning of the process. The applicant is essentially here at master plan and zoning. There are a lot more steps that lead to those specific site details that I know people had a lot of questions about, which is way over here at the very, very end when when building permits ultimately come in for site-specific development. And so I did want to outline what we're considering tonight are only the master plan and the zoning and not site-specific development, just because of where we are in the process. And we're not quite at that stage in terms of having either the engineering or the architecture available to view. Ultimately, master plans are really intended to be conceptual. Basically, could what's being proposed work at this location? Would it work? And then zoning, of course, establishes a range of uses and the standards that go along with that. And ultimately, what we need to ask ourselves are the range of uses appropriate at this location based on Elevate Las Cruces, adjacent roadway classifications, the character of the area, as well as other considerations. Some other things that I do want to point out is, again, site-specific development comes at the end of the process. And right now, they can't even design the site without having those established regulations from which to design from. Staff, of course, is not the final authority. We're just a recommending body, recommending entity. P&Z is the final authority on the master plan, and ultimately you're a recommending body to City Council for the rezoning. The City Council will determine whether or not the rezoning is appropriate at this location. I am requesting, and as should happen because these are two separate projects, that individual motions happen for each proposal. We are recommending approval of the master plan and then approval with conditions for the zone change. Of course, staff outlined those findings in the staff report, and they're listed here as well. And then again, some of the conditions have to do with the land uses being limited. You all received a handout in regard to that. As I understand it, in speaking with the applicant's representative, those have not been changed from what's in your packet. They're just reiterating what uses are allowed and what's not allowed. And that the building heights be limited to no higher than 35 feet. At this point, you have some options. You can vote to approve, you can vote to deny, yes with conditions, or to table. Denial requires alternate findings that support that denial to be articulated by the commission. And of course, we do have the applicant here to talk about the details and maybe answer any questions that you had or any concerns that were brought up from the last meeting. They do have a presentation ready, and as I understand it, there's several members of the public that also have additional concerns or questions that would be available to speak as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or turn it over to the applicant.
I guess we'd like to hear from the applicant. And it's not necessary to state your name. It's Mr. Kirk Clifton. But you should for the record.
Kirk Clifton, AICP, Souter Miller and Associates.
Okay, I'd like to swear you in. You know the game. Do you swear affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth on the penalty of law?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, once again, my name is Kirk Clifton. I represent the applicant. I'm with Souter Miller and Associates, and I'm here to hopefully guide us through the zone change and master plan process. It's a pleasure to be before you on this side of the fence. It's been a while, Commissioner Gordon and staff. Nice to see you once again as well. So I'll try not to regurgitate too much of what's already been discussed, but I would like to point out there are some things for the record that should be noted. The property is currently zoned R2. The applicant has agreed that the proposed C3 parcel will have a maximum allowed height of 35 feet. C3 typically allows up to 60 feet in height. And the proposed zoning of C3 commercial high density on the parcel fronting Bataan Memorial only. The R2 piece remains as it was presented during the previous hearing. And that is in this general vicinity. And as you can see, neither one of these parcels have any access to Holman Road. Project aerial. Here's the proposed master plan. As noted, this actually shows the demarcation between the R2 and the C3 commercial use for the master plan. I won't go through the purpose of a master plan, but as you know, as a commission, master plan does occur when there are multiple land uses involved, or there could be potentially an alternate summary subdivision process utilized on the commercial property as well. In terms of the zoning, it is currently R2. And again, the C3 piece strictly fronts on Bataan Memorial with R2 behind it. Through the process with staff and subsequent building permit submittals, an access agreement will be established as noted on the master plan. The R2 piece will have access off Bataan Memorial West and not Holman Road. As you can see, there is no direct access through the neighborhood or to Holman Road. Area traffic was briefly discussed as I read through the minutes and was briefed on the previous meeting. It should be noted that Bataan Memorial West is currently designated on the Mesilla Valley MPO thoroughfare plan as a minor arterial. As such, the February 2022 traffic count data shows a daily traffic volume on Bataan Memorial West of 1,789 vehicles per day. The Highway Capacity Manual, which is essentially the Bible of all traffic engineering, indicates that this two-lane roadway will carry 40,800 vehicles per day and 1,700 vehicles per hour. And I just kind of want to, lay out the transportation infrastructure that currently exists as is. The access will be granted, permitted through the New Mexico Department of Transportation to Bataan Memorial West. And the traffic generated from the proposed master planned area will have no impact on Holman traffic, as previously stated. Access will solely be from Bataan Memorial West, essentially a right in, right out. I won't go through each of these, but these are the uses that have been stricken from the commercial C3 high intensity. I don't know, staff, do you want me to read through these? I hope not, thank you. I think the audience thanks you as well. But there are several pages. It's the entire list found within the zoning ordinance. So as zoned, as you're all aware, this is R2. And as it stands today, you could put what would equate to a 3-story apartment complex up to 35 feet in height. And on the C3 piece that I'm talking about specifically that we're requesting the zone change on, and as part of the master plan, you could get up to 62 apartment units in that facility. And I know there were some concerns with setbacks and bufferings, and I'd like to just briefly talk about the R2 setbacks for these apartment structures. Under R2 zoning, you could get 15 dwelling units per acre. That's a 20-foot front setback, 7-foot rear, and a 7-foot side. 35-foot maximum height. So that's as it stands today. And what we're proposing on the piece fronting Bataan Memorial West is the C3. And what we do know today is that one of the uses that's going to be going on there is an early childhood education facility called Bumblebee Learning Center. And this learning center serves as a pre-K and up facility for children. And I can speak for myself, being a parent of children in the Las Cruces public school system and having just gone through the COVID situation. Now more than ever, we could really use a facility like this. And I would ask you to consider the positives in this application. And again, we're not here to talk about site design, site development. That comes later on in the process, as Catherine pointed out in her presentation as well. This is strictly about the zone change and the use of the C3 conditioned with the stricken uses and a reduced height of 35 feet. And as our traffic experts have determined, there are no significant impacts. There will be no traffic generated onto or from Holman. The site will essentially capture traffic, maybe coming from the neighborhoods off Holman, going into town, and that's it. So with that said, I'd be prepared to answer any questions the commission may have, or if staff needs any additional information.
All right, thank you. Anybody from the commission have any questions? Go ahead.
I have a couple of questions, but I appreciate some of the clarity around what would happen if there wasn't a zone change here. I was hoping if either yourself or staff could answer the question about the access to the remaining R2 parcel. Reading through the staff report and the minutes from when this appeared back in December, it sounded like there was a requirement to have 2 forms of access to that remaining R2, which would require some sort of access easement across a private parcel to, I presume, Holman Road. I was wondering if anyone could sort of speak to that component and how that plays into this possible zone change.
Excuse me, members of the commission, Commissioner Kaiser, I would like to speak to that, absolutely, provide some clarification perhaps. I think during the discussion, one of the topics was, well, how are they going to access? And a number of options were laid out there. Well, most likely they would go through the existing property with an easement established at the time of subdivision to access that R2. Another possibility could have been going through the private property, but that's less likely because they would have to negotiate negotiate with the private property owner to access through that, to access Holman Road. The likely scenario, and as was indicated by Mr. Clifton here, was that they would be accessing through their existing property from Bataan, utilizing an access easement ultimately established at the time of subdivision.
Thank you for that. Another question about the uses that are being proposed here. How exactly would that work? It seems like we're getting into kind of an overlay zone territory here as far as if this site were to be sold at a later point, how would the limited uses carry over and how would they play out for the, I guess, in perpetuity?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that as well. This is not an uncommon practice in the city of Las Cruces, where a developer or the commission or even city council deems certain uses undesirable for adjacent neighborhoods or generally the location being discussed. And what happens is those become an exhibit as part of the ordinance, and they're tied to that zoning in perpetuity.
Thank you. I think my last question for the moment is, there's no question this is a tough site to develop, but I think to sit here and say that there are no impacts at all as that would come as a result of the zone change, I don't think is necessarily a true statement. One is, across this country, we're in a desperate need of housing. So to take away potentially 62 units on this parcel and have, I don't know, one or two businesses, including a childcare center, that has almost no relation to the neighborhood behind it because of the access issues that we've just talked about, you are going to have impacts. You are going to have traffic impacts. If someone wanted to, from the neighborhood, send their kids to this daycare center, they have no choice but to drive. There's no pedestrian access. There's no other way to get to the site safely. And I just want to kind of bring that up and that, there are impacts here. And I'm not sure if the applicant has considered the types of uses and how they would service this particular neighborhood. I guess that's just more of a comment than a question.
Thank you, Commissioner, Mr. Chair, Commissioners Kaiser. I appreciate your comments and really, sure, there's going to be some impacts, but they're negligible. And as I demonstrated with the highway capacity as built today, those impacts would not be filled. It's well below capacity. And quite frankly, most working class folks that live in the area that would be utilizing a facility like this probably won't be walking. They'll probably be driving on their way to work to drop their student off. So, I look at it from more of a global land use perspective and what's in the area. And sure, yes, we are lacking in some areas, some residential, but there is quantifiable justification for mixed use development. And in essence, that could potentially reduce traffic patterns in other parts of the city where there could be an influx of people dropping their children off. So this is, paired up with that live, work, play type situation. And as you've seen, there's a sea of residential out there. And I can't think of a better use than a child care, early learning child facility such as this.
I certainly agree with the comment that this is a much needed service, but I think there's questions about whether or not this is the right location, at least in my mind.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I have one question. The application is titled a learning center. And my concern, and I asked at the last meeting back in December, as to whether or not this is going to be a care center or a learning center. I keep hearing two different stories. And if it's going to be a learning center, at what age are they going to start bringing in children? 4 or 5 years old, 3 years old? I mean, they're not going to bring in a baby that's 1 year old and try to educate it. Or is it going to be a daycare center and an education. Could somebody please give me a definitive answer as to what it is? Because this is titled Bumblebee Learning Center.
It is indeed, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, it is indeed a learning center for children that are pre-K and slightly younger. What I would envision it as, they have these facilities in other parts of the region, but the Las Cruces Public Schools has a program called DD Preschool, and that begins taking in students at age 3. And although they're young, it's still an educational facility. So there's still a learning aspect of them there. It's not just drop your kid off, we're going to babysit them, come pick them up, when you're done working. It will have an education component, and that's the core of the business is learning. It might be younger students, but they'll be learning while they're there. It's not just a daycare facility.
Okay, and just one other item. I have a question. If you can go back to the map of the R2 and C3, just to show not that.
The staff's map?
No, just where it shows the property. That's it right there is fine. It was stated that there's going to be some kind of an easement for people to get from the Bataan Memorial to get to, we assume there are going to be some kind of residences in R2. And what kind of an easement? It just seems to me that somebody's just going to drive up through C3 and make a right turn and go into R2. I mean, it's all one property.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that is accurate. And, in working with commercial development for a number of years now, it's actually quite common to have a shared access agreement with the abutting parcel. So essentially, this will be an approved access by the city of Las Cruces, which will also include the Las Cruces Fire Department, that will provide reasonable access, two-way access to the R2 site for medium-density multifamily housing. So that'll be established with the platting.
I understand
We'll have to show that on there.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, that's all I have is, thank you very much.
And real quick, if I could, the actual applicant is here that could tell you a little more about the facility if you'd like to hear it.
Absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
we'd love to.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners and Chairman. Am I going to be sworn in, or? My name is Daisy Lira. Daisy Lira.
Okay, I have to swear you in, please. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do, yes.
Okay, could you please speak a little louder into the microphone so we can hear you?
Yes. Okay, so the question was asked if we are a learning center or childcare or daycare. We are a learning center. Education starts in the womb. So we do work with parents, even when they're pregnant with moms. We give them the tools so that they could get take their pregnancy to a healthy pregnancy throughout. We do serve children ages 6 weeks to 12 years old. And so we do serve children that are babies, and that's when they are learning the most. So from 0 to 5 years old, that's when a child learns the most, and they're at their full potential. And so our mission at the Bumblebee Learning Center is, in collaboration with our parents and our community, it is to provide children with quality childcare and learning experience while providing excellence education in a healthy and safe learning environment where children are prepared with critical skills, developmental and social, creative and emotional, physical, intellectual skills to reach their full potential. So learning starts at the womb. And we do take care of our families, we take care of our children, and I pride myself to being one of the best learning centers in New Mexico. Yes, did that answer your question, Chair?
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then we can go to the public. Is there anybody here this evening who wishes to talk on this? Just please raise your hand. Just one person? All right, sir, would you, 2 people? All right, we'll start the gentleman in the back. All right, come forward. That's you, sir, yes. Yeah, I'll give him 3 minutes. We'll allow you to speak for 3 minutes. Just please state your name and let me swear you in, please.
Yes, sir. John Bola?
Okay, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, thank you.
Thank you. Boy, where to start? The comment of no impact of Holman Road traffic, I can't believe that would even be stated. That's just so ridiculous. I have a photo here, because as I had commented in December about traffic, this is coming off of US 70 heading north on Holman, where the two elementary schools are located, okay? So if someone's coming east on 70, going to go to the daycare center, they have to come around and do this, I'm from the Midwest, Michigan left, to get into this daycare center. How are you going to deal with that kind of traffic on top of what we already have? How can you say there's no impact? They have obviously not been out there to see this type of traffic. Shame on them. Shame on them. So, at the December meeting, it was suggested and agreed that the developer to meet with the residents to discuss concerns and objections. That has never happened. There is a daycare center less than 4 miles on the north side of US 70. Wouldn't it be more beneficial to build a daycare center, learning center, however you want to phrase it, on the south side of US 70 as opposed to the north side? There's also, as was proposed, and again, as a resident of that area, I have not been informed of any changes to the master plan, any changes to what's coming in, what's going to be put on these parcels. So the question of brought up in December was a self-storage facility. Well, there's one that's less than 2 miles away from this proposed area already, and they're already expanding. So why do we need another? It was referred to a number of times in the December meeting about Elevate Las Cruces and that plan that's been put in place and everything that was put into developing that plan. So as per the approved final document, January 30th, 2020, less than or just over 2 years ago, it shows and states the following. Figure 3.4, the proposed land area is to be used as a suburban neighborhood. Definition suburban neighborhood by the state or by the plan, low to moderate density residential land use. Predominant land use is single-family detached dwelling, but limited to areas may be developed for multifamily dwellings. And then also on figure 3.2, growth forecast, there's going to be an added 38,350 new residents between 2018 and 2045, which equals 15,350 new households with an additional 16,100 new housing units. All this on a report that's barely 2 years old and already being asked to change to research and discoveries. What designated commercial properties now are going to be rezoned to residential to accommodate the houses that we're losing by changing this zone? And last but not least, I know I'm running a little bit over, very next exit, there's commercial property already for sale. It's already zoned. So why are you coming to us when you don't even have to go 2 miles? That's less than a mile away. Land for sale, already zoned commercial. Why bother us? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. In the first row. Please state your name, please.
Crystal Garcia.
Let me swear you in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead. 3 minutes.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Commissioners. My name, like I said, is Crystal Garcia. I'm a local realtor here in the city, and I actually live really close to the subject property. And I just simply wanted to express my support for the rezoning of this parcel, in particular for the C3 zoning change that the Learning Center is seeking. As a realtor, I have seen more and more younger families with small children pour into our city, and in particular up Highway 70, all the way up to NASA exit, although I know a lot of that is county. There are 2 reasons why I'm in favor for this change. One is due to the fact that the state of New Mexico is ranked dead last in public school education, and if early education centers like this can come and provide the children in our communities a chance to improve their academics by starting them early in their education, then I don't see why anyone wouldn't want that. And then two, simply is to accommodate the population growth. As it was just stated, as cities grow, the more land is developed, yes, especially up Highway 70. We're going to need more amenities, and I think this is going to help that cause. And then also, last, I believe that this development will help just that, and will also help complement the planned Elevate Las Cruces comprehensive plan that you guys have. And that's all I have for tonight. Just wanted to show my support for that development, and thank you again for letting me speak. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Does the applicant wish to respond to any of these comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The only statement I'd like to make at this time is that there will not be any storage units. That's not even a use being considered tonight. As I mentioned, we discussed the C3 piece, and the R2 will remain R2 as zoned for those permitted uses.
Is there some reason that, I know we discussed at the December meeting that there was supposed to be an attempt by the applicant to meet with the community, and apparently that has not been done? Can anyone answer to that? I think that it would have been nice to have had some input from them at some kind of a meeting.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my understanding is that there was correspondence with the neighborhood through email. No.
Excuse me, please.
Swear you in.
If you're going to speak, would you please state your name and let me swear you in?
My name is Michael Johnson.
All right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Early on in the process, we sent emails as part of the early notification process to the residents. At that time, we had a proposed C3 use on the entire property that we're discussing today, the 5.1 acres. As a result of the feedback we received from the neighborhood at that time, we've heard discussion, the R2 zoning was proposed to be a storage unit facility. Based on the feedback we got from the neighborhood, we received, I think they're part of your packet, 5 or 6 emails. We changed that. We removed the self-storage units and just left that as an R2 zoning. And that was a direct result of the feedback we received from the neighborhood at that time. So we have just come forward to continue to have the property that's fronting on Baton as a C3 zoning, and then we would leave the back parcel as currently exists. So that's in response to your question, Mr. Chairman. One other comment I would like to make. My name is Michael Johnson. I was a traffic engineer for the city of Las Cruces from 1984 to 2000. And then I was in charge of traffic from 2006 to 2011. So I'm very familiar with traffic in the city of Las Cruces. I'm very familiar with how it acts, how it's going to respond. And those comments regarding traffic, maybe we shouldn't have made an absolute statement that will have no impact, but the impact that these residents or this business will have on the school traffic of the elementary schools on Holman Road is very minimal at the best. So I would like to put that on the record, and just so we are talking that way. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Just let me think for a minute. I realize that approving the master plan doesn't give us any information as to what's going to go on this property. It might help us in thinking about what the zoning change will mean, but I think at this point, I will go back to the audience again. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment now, considering the fact of what was just said? All right, well, let's start in the first row. This lady, I will give you just a couple of minutes to respond to his comment. Be careful. Will somebody help her? Could you please state your name?
My name is Carol Main.
All right, let me swear you in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am, 2 minutes.
Okay, it was our understanding, as I believe was yours, we were supposed to have a communication since the December meeting. That has not happened. They did not address that. Yes, we responded back after we got the email in August and we talked about it at the December meeting, but there has been no further communication since December. That's the point. We don't know about all these changes until he said it right now. Nobody told us anything. That's all I got to say.
All right, thank you. Someone else? Ma'am? Please state your name.
Eileen Umbreeze.
Let me swear you in, please. Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
Yes.
Go ahead, 2 minutes.
One of my concerns is, if this rezoning happens and these individuals decide, oh, we don't want to go forward with this learning center, we want to sell this property, even though it has the 35-foot implementation or whatever it is that you called it, they could go in and easily put something else in there rather than a learning center. Is that correct?
I believe so, that they can do that. They have the right to sell the property.
Once it's rezoned, and that's a concern as well. With the property values going up, commercial property, all properties, maybe it'd be beneficial to not do a daycare or do a learning center, and we're going to sell this, and then something else come in like Family Dollar or something that we really don't need there.
The problem at the moment, however, is that they're very specific in what they're talking about on a property that is C3 that they're going to put in a learning center. I also believe that they talked back in December that there was also going to be a couple of small businesses attached to it. I don't really remember being very specific, but at this point, we don't know. But they're saying that that's what they're going to do, but they do have the right to sell that property.
That's a concern
We
that we
don't
have
know.
too.
I mean, we have to go on what is being presented to
Right.
us this evening.
Right, but that's always a possibility. That's why the
It's always a
commercial
possibility
zoning
in
is scary.
anything.
It could happen. That's a concern.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I understand your feelings. Does the gentleman want to make another comment? But I'll only give you 2 minutes this time. Since you've already been sworn in, just repeat your name, please.
John Bola. Out of curiosity, as far as the Learning Center is concerned, how many children do you intend to have at this location? So a 7,000 square foot building?
Unfortunately, her answer is inaudible to us and to a recording person. If someone would like to just respond to that.
Okay, so we currently have facilities. I currently have 4 facilities, and all my facilities are under 100 children. There's 2 facilities that are 50, and the other 2 are 100. So it's under 100. We are a 5-star center. We do strive to be the best high-quality early learning center that you could find in the state of New Mexico. And like I said, we have been, since 2007, we've been doing this for a lot of years, and that's just my biggest, that's my passion to do. And I wouldn't sell it. I really wouldn't sell it. I've been working, for this for a lot of years, and it's a dream of mine. So I just want to continue to grow, and I really don't think that there shouldn't be anything to worry about. I understand, and I understand that
Please talk into the microphone.
I understand everybody's concern, but yeah, it's really Like I said, it's a high-quality learning center. In regards to the schools, I know that you mentioned the parents going in. This would alleviate actually traffic because we have 2 vans, or depending on how many, right? We have the vans and we get all the children. So the parents go after 6 to pick them up. And so it would alleviate traffic from the schools at 3, 4 in the, when they get out.
Is it possible that you can just tell me, is that the only thing that's going to be on this piece of property, is just the learning center? Excuse me, sir.
Well, no, my vision is for us to have the learning center. The other ones would be, I don't know if you've heard of third-party intervention specialists so that they could help the children and the families. So Aprendamos Tresco, that's what I would want to see, so that the children that are in my care, while they're in my care, they're able to get therapies right next to them. So we could just kind of make it a flow, like more of a, I wouldn't want anything else other than something that would help the children and would work hand in hand with us.
All right, thank you. I'd like to end this discussion now.
I have more, if I may.
Just one item, and that's it.
Okay. Also in December, it was discussed that there would be an easement between the building and the residences, which I am a member, I am a resident, that would be backed up against this property. It was stated 15 feet. I'm curious, you got power lines. Does that 15-foot include the 8-foot easement for the power lines, or is that going to be on top of, so it's actually going to be 23 feet? And along those lines, why is every other commercial property along that frontage road 40 feet away from any residence? Thank you.
All right, then. I'd like to close this discussion. Well, we have another gentleman. All right, sir. Are you going to say something other than what's already been said, or you just agree with what has been said? Be careful. Please state your name.
My name is Brian Breitag.
Please speak into the microphone.
I'm usually not accused of not speaking loud enough, so my name is Brian Breitag.
All right, let me swear you in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
All right, go ahead. 2 minutes.
Yes, and I won't take that long if I'm lucky. I still didn't get an answer. Is it 50 or is it 100 students?
This is not a point for cross discussion. If we please address the commission, and
Okay,
if necessary,
I didn't get an answer.
we'll get an answer.
Okay, thank you. Also, there was a list of non-uses that Mr. Clifton had shown.
He's talking to the microphone?
I'm sorry.
This is being recorded, so she has to hear what you're saying.
I understand. Sorry. I would like to see the list of what they're not going to put in there. Now, that's something that should have been given to us before this meeting. Doesn't anybody agree, or doesn't anybody think we shouldn't have had that? Anyway, also, I understand that the lighting, the wall height, and all this will be discussed at a later date when we get to planning. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. All right, that is the end of discussion. Are there any questions from the commission? Do you have a question?
No, not so much a question, but just a comment. Just first of all, I just want to tell everybody that's here, we do appreciate you being here. But unfortunately, what we're discussing is just the zoning. It's not what the property is going to be used for. So, just would appreciate moving forward if we can just kind of keep that going. That's it.
All right. If not, then I think that we are ready for a vote. So we have to vote on these 2 particular items, 7.1 and 7.2, separately. So I'm going to need a vote on each one. Catherine, you have something to say?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I just do want to remind you that there are some recommended conditions associated with the zoning. So if a motion is made and you are in agreement with those conditions, I would recommend stating them. One being the height limited to 35 feet and the other limiting the uses to those that were outlined in attachment number 3.
Okay, and I want to also remind everyone that the zoning change will have to go to the city council, correct? And in that case, I should also remind everyone who is, if the commission does vote to approve this zoning change, then you do have the right to appeal before city council if you object. So then I'm going to need a motion on 7.1.
I'll make a motion to approve item number 7.1. Yes, which is a master plan.
I need a second.
Commissioner Vega, a second.
Board Member Guerrero?
Yes, I approve based on just approving it.
Due to city,
So, I mean, due to, first of all, I mean, it does fit the comprehensive plan, and I mean, I personally believe with daycare probably would benefit the community.
thank you. Board Member Vega?
I vote yes based on staff recommendations, and it fits with the Elevate Las Cruces comprehensive plan.
Board Member Smith?
I vote yes based on staff recommendation and also meets the objective of the master plan.
Board Member Kaiser?
Yes, based on staff recommendation.
Chair Gordon?
I vote yes based on my site visit, the discussion this evening. Goes along with Elevate Las Cruces and our staff recommendations, so I vote yes.
Thank you.
Now I need a motion on item 7.2, which is a zoning change. Remember, with conditions of the 35-foot height and, what was the other one?
Uses as outlined in
Right.
attachment number 3.
Of the list in attachment 3, right.
Make a motion to approve item 7.2 regarding the zone change.
Commissioner Smith, I second.
Board Member Guerrero?
I vote yes based on the same reasons earlier, and staff recommendation as well.
Board Member Vega?
I vote yes based on the, but to include the conditions outlined by staff, including the height and all of the different line uses that were pointed out in attachment 3.
Board Member Smith?
I vote yes based on staff recommendation and also the changes that were included as far as the height variance.
Board Member Kaiser?
I vote yes based on staff recommendation, though I encourage the applicant to look seriously into non-automotive connectivity to the neighborhood.
Chair Gordon?
Also, again, on my site visit, I also vote yes with conditions, and it does go with Elevate Las Cruces. In that case, I do vote yes.
Thank you.
So I believe that's 5-0. Thank you. Okay, now we move on in the agenda to item 7.3, which is the Amador Avenue variance request. Mr. Bodegas.
Commissioner Gordon, members of the commission, if I can get this launched here. Vincent Bodegas for the record, interim planner. I will be presenting the variance request for 1413 East Amador Avenue. This is, in essence, the second time it's reached the agenda stage. First time we've gone through this, we'll go through it with great length and detail. But it involves property at 1413 East Amador Avenue, and as I will show you, it will include 3 variance aspects to the request. It's currently a restaurant use and has been for some time now. It's roughly 0.6 acres in size. It's currently zoned C2, which is our commercial medium density zoning district, and was created, at least that lot was created as part of the Las Cruces Park Addition 29 subdivision. And the structure was constructed in 1976. Since then, obviously, as it's become used as the restaurant, Delicias Restaurant in place now, there have been some renovation and some expansion projects associated with that over the years, and this would certainly serve as one additional one should it be approved in the manner presented. So the zoning map shown here identifies the property in red. It, again, C2 zoning. East Amador is located here, South Nevada Street located to the east, and then Solano Drive at the western location. So you do have existing uses adjacent to it. This small triangular piece right now is vacant, raw land, and then this structure on this eastern property suffered some roof damage and has since been demolished, so it is presently vacant as well. But this is the property in question. You have adjoining zoning further out, single-family residential uses or zoning to the east, and then you got some multifamily low density zoning in the form of R2 over on the west. This is the aerial map that shows the property again. You can see that the building that has since been removed sits here. This is a funeral home off to the north and an existing, I believe it's an auto repair shop directly to the west, and a mixture of other both residential and commercial uses along East Amador Avenue, stretching downtown along the way. So the applicant has come forward and indicated that they're wishing to install an outdoor terrace. It would be adjacent to Amador Avenue, approximately 950 square feet in area. And as a result of that triggers an expansion of the existing restaurant use so that non-conforming aspects on the property have to be brought into compliance. So what they're having to look at is parking, first of all. With the outdoor terrace being proposed, they are going to be required to provide 41 auto parking stalls on site. They are deficient 10 stalls, and so they can provide the 31. They originally showed 33, but 2 had to be excluded due to clear sight triangle provisions in the code. So the variance seeks to allow a 10 stall deviation. The front setback along Amador Avenue, there's a 15-foot setback required based on the site plan that I'll show you in a little bit. It appears as if it gets really close to the full depth, and so it's advertised as a full 15 feet. It may be a little less than that, hence the plus or minus, giving us a little latitude. And then the landscape area, they're deficient based on the expansion. They would have to provide an additional 393 square feet of landscape area based on calculations as it looks at both what exists and what is proposed. All told, you're looking at 3,116 square feet of landscape area required, and they're going to be shy by 393 square feet. In talking with the applicant, they are able to meet the quantity aspects in our design standards. There's calculations for landscaping, both in terms of quantity of product installed and the landscape area. So they can meet the quantity calculation requirement. It's just not the area that they can meet at this point in time. So the applicant has submitted their request citing the following justification bullets, if you will. Basically, the flexibility that the terrace provides is a substantial benefit to the business because of pandemic-related issues. Obviously, there were limitations as to how many people could be within the building, and having opportunities outside the building was considered a benefit to the applicant and to the patrons that go to the restaurant. There's also the ability to enhance the patrons' dining experience there with the restaurant by providing an outdoor seating environment. And then also they cite that the area where they are currently located, basically you have businesses that close up shop right about 6 p.m. So this gives an opportunity to allow a business that's opened up a longer period of time, providing some activity to the area. This is the existing site plan. This area here is predominantly the largest portion of their landscape area as they have it shown. You do have some other spots elsewhere on site, but they are much smaller. Your primary access is here, and you have other ingress egress here at this location. So just to show you, this is the area that the next slide will identify as the area for the proposed terrace. And this is what they provided. You see the terrace boundary here delimited by what will be a rock wall or a wall of some fashion. And you have tables situated with these little squares identified on the terrace area. They do show a ponding area here. As part of the review process, a few things came to light. There is some water line that is currently encroached upon by the existing building, not to mention what would be proposed. That is a building permit issue and will have to be resolved at that time. I'm just pointing it out because that was brought up during the review process. There is concern that this ponding area may further disrupt the line, so they're going to have to do something with that, maybe relocate it. But again, that too is a building permit issue. But this is what they're showing. There's not going to be any physical structure attached to the building. They're going to probably have removable shade canopy that they can pull out and retract. But fire made it clear in their review that there was not to be anything physically attached to the building, which the applicant is fine with. Here's a few pictures of that area. This is the southern facade of Delicias as it is today. And so you're talking this area in here where the terrace will be. A couple more photos. This is the eastern facade for the most part, showing that existing ingress-egress, and the eastern facade, again, ingress-egress here. Notice was sent to the surrounding properties. I did receive 2 phone calls as of today. One was just a general inquiry. They were just simply curious as to what was being requested and asked for clarification. Another was from the property owner of the funeral home, indicating that they weren't opposed to what was being requested. They thought it was a wonderful thing that the business was growing in the manner it was growing, but that apparently they had a gentleman's agreement for some overflow parking, but there was nothing formal, nothing written, and they would not be allowing that to continue. So at least from overflow parking, from the perspective of the funeral home, that's not an option, but perhaps from the other properties within the vicinity that can be entertained. So staff recommendation and findings. The recommendation staff provides is conditional approval. First of all, the setback variance should be limited to just the terrace only, not any further encroachment by any part of the building in the future, for instance, through an addition. And also that the business owner make a concerted effort to investigate and, if possible, enter into a formal shared parking agreement pursuant to code to lessen the parking impact. And what the code allows is within 500 feet of the subject property that I showed you, they can enter into said shared parking agreement if feasible, if agreed to by other property owners. The findings are as follows. Basically, again, we're talking 0.6 acres of land. The business operated with a temporary outdoor seating area, much like what is being proposed. And what I'm told is that there was limited operational issues in terms of access, parking, that kind of thing. The zoning code allows for those shared parking agreements within the 500-foot distance criteria. And the front yard setback variance should only be pertaining to the terrace, and no auto parking stall loss results from the placement of the terrace. It's the requirement that the terrace provides in addition to existing uses where that extra parking kicks in. So they're not deleting any parking, it's just it requires additional stalls. Many policies also within Elevate Las Cruces comprehensive plan lend support to the request. And again, no public input was received opposing the request. And also the landscape fauna, the softscape, can be accommodated within the landscape areas, but the landscape area issue needs to be addressed, and that only represents 12.6% of the required area. And finally, a couple more. The action would not be contrary to Section 3810K. It does, in this instance, have the opportunity to provide or spur economic development at both the neighborhood and the citywide level through the generation of gross receipts tax. And also the variances would help bolster the business operation and allow them to continue to operate on site and thereby provide some retention opportunities. Oops. So your options this evening, commissioners, is to vote yes and approve the variances as stipulated. You can vote no and deny them. Please keep in mind that denial will require your own findings of fact, not presented during staff review. You could vote with conditions. The conditions staff proposed was to limit the variance for the front setback to the terrace only, and to also require the applicant to investigate and, if feasible, enter into a shared parking agreement. And if you agree with those, could you please add those to your motion, please? And that concludes staff's presentation. I believe the applicant's representative is in attendance and can answer any further questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody from the commission who has any questions for Mr. Venegas? Go ahead.
I do. It's not so much questions, but actual genuine concern. Parking, I mean, I've been to Delicias quite a few times, so I'm familiar with the parking situation there, and I didn't know that they kind of gentleman agreement shared parking with the funeral home behind them, so that's good, and I mean, that's between them. I don't think that's up to us to decide, but, you know, I mean, I think the pandemic really brought a lot of issues as far as, you know, economics and business survival, blah, blah, blah. But this would, you know, definitely, I mean, hopefully attract more customers for them. But I would just be really concerned about the parking situation. So could we talk maybe just a little bit more about that? I mean, I know you said that requirement is 51, but we're lowering it to 41. You know, how would that affect existing parking and existing traffic in there?
Yeah, so the proposed use, in addition to the existing use, after you do the calculation, it comes to 41 auto parking stall requirement. On site, even as their proposed layout shows, we counted up 31 legal stalls. They showed 2 more, but those were in clear sight triangles. We had to exclude those. So that does raise a question. You know, there's going to be 10 stalls that aren't available that potentially could be of value in terms of parking considerations for patrons. I think in terms of the definition of the property boundaries, you know, how they're laid out, that kind of thing, there's no opportunity to further increase parking on site, so that's why staff proposed the shared parking agreement to help lessen the burden. They wouldn't, I guess they could, but they wouldn't necessarily identify 10 stalls to be used by adjacent, you know, from an adjacent property, but maybe they can consider a staff parking only or something to limit any potential damage or just, you know, trash or anything like that. Those were kind of some of the things that the funeral home to the north cited as a concern, but they felt that it wasn't just staff, it was, you know, patrons in general, that kind of thing. So it really depends on how they word the shared parking agreement between the two, which we become a party to in that we receive that document and it gets part of the, you know, becomes part of the permit record. But that's really their only option. I mean, in terms of lessening the impact, lessening the load.
What happens if they don't get it?
Then what you're approving is minus 10 stalls, so 31. Yeah.
Is there any way that we can wait to find out if they can get this agreement?
I've talked to the applicant and indicated that that's going to be an issue for us to consider, for them to consider. At this point in time, I think you could certainly approve 2 of the 3, 3 of the 3, 1 of the 3 variances without, you know, the others in tow. But I would recommend taking action either way on the variances as stated, as presented. Keep in mind that the parking agreement is generally an issue, again, that's left to the building permit process.
So it's apparent that if they don't get this agreement and they go ahead and put in the terrace, that they are going to be stuck with whatever parking that will be left, and they will have to bear the fact that potential customers will be turned away because they don't have a place to park.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
That's their risk.
That's correct.
So that should not concern us.
Well, it may be a concern, but that's one of the issues that you have to weigh in the voting of that item.
Isn't there a piece of property right next to it that's vacant?
Yes, there's currently, if I could find it.
It's just bare ground.
Yeah, there's a couple of parcels right now. This one right now, it had a lengthy building, existing building that was torn down. That was the one demolished, so that's an opportunity to check into. And then over here, they're going to have to get a little creative as to how they use that triangular piece, but there is an opportunity to possibly share parking there. We have to look at code allowances to see if parking lots would be an allowed use, and they'd have to pave, et cetera, but the possibility is there. And you also, Mr. Chairman, if I may, you also have other properties on the other side, which, yes, you're talking about pedestrian crossings, that's a concern, but there are other properties that could be considered other than just the vacant ones.
All right, are there any other questions from the commission? Commissioner Kaiser?
Thank you, Chairman. Just something to consider as we're having this conversation about parking. Cars don't eat at restaurants, people do. There's a lot of parking along East Amador. You've got residents that are fairly adjacent to this parcel. So, you know, I think 1 or 2 fewer parking spots is not going to be a deal breaker here. My question, going back to their current operating status, just to clarify, they did have outdoor seating or do similar to what's being proposed since sometime in the pandemic?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Kaiser, yes, they had a temporary tent, much like what was seen elsewhere in other restaurant venues, and operated it in a very similar fashion, outdoor seating kind of thing.
And to our knowledge, in the time that they've been operating that, have there been any complaints or issues related to the lack of parking?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Kaiser, I am not aware of any significant operational issues related to traffic or parking.
Thank you. My last question, going back to the landscaping piece, if you go back to their proposal real quick. So that proposed ponding area, that would be essentially a catchment basin for runoff off the parking lot, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Kaiser, that's what they're intending. They were looking at putting a drop inlet somewhere in this vicinity to capture water from the impervious surface here, allowing it to drain through the pipe and into this ponding area. But utilities' concern was that there is a water line in this general vicinity and that would not work. In talking with the applicant today, they indicated that that's for illustrative purposes only, and that could be resized according to calculation, impervious area calculation. So it may not be that big. And if it does change and we can pull it away from that water line, it might work. Again, a building permit issue, but if it simply does not work, they're going to have to find another area for that ponding.
Okay, so if I'm reading this correctly, that proposed ponding area as proposed is not counted in the landscaped area, is that correct?
That is correct.
So if that ponding area were to become some sort of a bioswale rather than just a rock or dirt hole in the ground, could that count towards their landscaped area and maybe put them over the requirement?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Kaiser, what we generally allow is some plantings on the upper portion of the pond, and then down in the lower depth, since it collects all the silt and the oils and everything else, we don't allow plantings in there.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the commission wish to speak? Has the applicant here and may to add something to this? Please come forward. Would you please state your name and let me swear you in, please?
Angel Ramos.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Please try to speak louder and clearly into the microphone so we can hear you.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's okay, thank you. I'm Angel Ramos, architect for New Republic Architects. We've been solving small issues in this restaurant for many years. We troubleshoot these technical problems every day of the week. And to dissipate some of the concerns that this particular property has, the owner just acquired the property to the right of it in order to be able to accommodate additional parking. So we're in the process of looking into that. The calculations hasn't been done. The proposed use of the neighboring property has not been defined, but the intent of the owner to satisfy the requirements provided by Mr. Venegas are there. And thank you for a nice presentation of our project. The ponding area, if need be, can be relocated. The civil engineer has given us options. We have impervious surfaces that will allow for some drainage. We're not obstructing percolation in our new proposed landscaping area. Of course, we're dealing with situation where we're reacting, or the building and the owner are reacting to situations that happened during the pandemic, where more space was required to accommodate the same number of people. So some room to expand was required. In some instances, there was a need for outdoor parking, and this is much better than having a tent in the parking lot. So I hope that this makes this project being viewed in a more favorable light. I know that timings are not always perfect, but the intent to satisfy everything in the code is there.
Now, I just have to clarify something. Mr. Benegas, please. A few minutes ago, I asked you about the vacant parcels next to this restaurant, that bare ground that's there now. Are you telling me that the applicant has purchased that land, he now owns it? Is that what you said?
Yes, sir. I found that about that information before coming to this meeting.
So that has not been presented to us, part of the backup. So really, the question of parking now is not even going to be an issue, if that's what he's going to use the property for. I would assume that he would.
Mr. Chairman, if that is indeed the case, I wasn't aware of that either, but if they're going to include that as part of the overall circulation, overall operation of the restaurant, then that would satisfy parking.
Is the owner of the restaurant here?
Yes.
Can he address and answer that question?
He mentioned it to me a minute ago before presenting. That's the sole purpose. Well, that's the purpose, the main purpose of purchasing that property. Parking lots, for those that have studied urban planning, it's not a perfect solution. Some parking lots sit vacant and they create the heat island effect and other things. So we're balancing the requirements of the city, not overdoing, being mindful of what parking lots are intended to do. And so I think that we covered as best we could every angle in order to make everybody happy for this project.
I myself am not concerned about the fact that I would be willing to grant the reduction in the number of parking spaces, but it also makes it a lot easier for me to make a decision if I know that the piece of property on the side of that existing property that they have is also going to be used for parking. It makes it, we're here to try to help bolster business. It's good for Las Cruces, it's good for the applicant. And I think that there is everything that I would like to do to make sure that we can do that. So if there is that intent of the owner to put a parking lot there, then it makes the decision a lot easier on my part.
Yes, sir. On our firm, we deal with the technical sides every day of the week. But the owner and his business, they're service providers for the community. I just waited in that restaurant for a few hours while the time to come to this meeting came. And I was pleasantly surprised because there's people that work there, servers that offered me a glass of water, chips and salsa at no charge. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know that I was the architect. I declined everything, and still they brought me water, and they were very pleasant. So that's the culture of that company. They're very accommodating. They're looking to satisfy all the requirements of the law. Just the timing sometimes are not perfect, but I can tell you for sure that these are people that are always doing the right thing.
Well, I think I can agree with that from what you're saying, but I can't envision any reason to buy that other piece of property other than to put a parking lot there. What are they going to do with it? Build another restaurant? I don't think they would do that. Then they would really have a parking problem.
Yes.
All right. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on this? All right. Seeing none, then Mr. Benegas from staff.
Mr. Chairman, if that is indeed the case, if they've acquired the property to accommodate some additional parking, they would easily be able to accommodate the landscape area as well. So really, it narrows it down to the setback.
All right, I have to ask you a question then. Can we make this approval on a condition that the property that has been purchased and will be used as a parking lot? Council?
Chair, Commission, can you please repeat the question?
Can we make our vote based on a condition that if the applicant has purchased that vacant property next to his current ownership of the land that he does now, his parcel, that he will build a parking lot there?
So you want, okay, so the condition is that you want to require him that he has to build a parking lot on the new parcel?
Well, I've been told, and our commission has been told, that he has purchased that land, and I can't see for any reason other than to build a parking lot. I don't know what else he would put there. It would be permission to do that.
At this time, I don't think that parcel is in contention, and I don't think you can make a condition just based off of some other parcel that's not in front of this board.
Well, it's been brought up by the applicant. Catherine?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I would just caution you to tie basically the future of one parcel to another in this regard. It could create some unintended consequences, especially if the intent was to develop something entirely different. Perhaps there may be parking available for this, or maybe not. But it's too amorphous at this point in time to tie two individual parcels together in that regard.
All right, thank you. Then I can only hope that that's what he's going to do. As far as I'm concerned, there should be no further discussion. Mr. Benegas, anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I was just checking with Mr. Ramos, and one option the commission can do is to either remove from consideration or simply deny the landscape area and the variance for the additional parking. That removes the issue from the variance consideration. They're still on the hook through the building permit process to accommodate that. And in talking with Mr. Ramos, the way to solve that problem from the building permit process is to carry it out on the adjacent parcel. So you get out of the legality of dealing with that parcel as part of the condition, and it becomes an issue that has to be resolved and resolved at the building permit level.
Well, personally, I think that as it stands, I think it would work. I think that they would have to deal with the problem by reducing the number of parking that they have, that if customers come and they have no place to park, they'll leave. If he has bought this property on the side to put in a parking lot, that certainly solves the problem. So as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to just leave it the way it is. And if anybody has any questions or comments from my commission, all right, then I think perhaps we could have a vote. So I need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance for the parking, the landscape, and the setback. However, I would like to eliminate the condition that the applicant have to seek out a shared parking agreement. I think it's pretty evident in the last however long during the COVID pandemic, they've gotten along just fine. I don't see any reason why we need to add parking to this section of Amador.
I second.
Is that acceptable then? Can we do that? Council?
So what exactly is the board trying to do?
I would like to make a motion to approve the variance for the parking, the setback, and the landscaping. However, I would like to eliminate the condition that the applicant have to seek out a shared parking agreement.
You want to eliminate that condition that he seeks out the, okay, that's fine.
That's correct. I
That
do not want the applicant to need to go through that.
Okay, that's fine. That is acceptable.
All right, in that case, we do have a second, then we need a vote.
Board Member Guerrero?
Yes, based on site visit staff recommendation and the new information we just heard.
Board Member Vega?
I vote yes, based on staff recommendations, everything that's been shared. Maybe you could add 10 bike racks to find some additional means of getting there.
Board Member Smith?
I vote yes, based on staff recommendation and on site visit.
Board Member Kaiser?
I vote yes, based on staff recommendation and consistency with Elevate Las Cruces.
Chair Gordon?
I vote yes, based on staff findings and staff recommendations. I'm hope that this will boost their business. I think that everything that they want to do is probably what I'm thinking they will do. And my site visit, and according to Elevate Las Cruces, again, I vote yes. So I think we have a 5-0.
Yes, thank you, 5-0.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, good night.
All right, now we move to new business. Item 8.1, the 100 South Church Street variance request. Mr. Venegas, you're going to do that also?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, Vincent Menegas, interim planner for the record. I will be presenting this item. It is a variance request for property located at 100 South Church Street, case number 21V005000126. Current conditions are as follows. The property is currently vacant, used to be a church use, certainly evident from the Church Street side if you're viewing the property from that location. Otherwise, it can be a little bit deceiving as to where it's located. I'll show you a map, an aerial in a minute that kind of proves that point. The property is plus or minus 0.35 acres in size. It is zoned DDC MS, which is our Downtown Development Code, the Main Street zone. It is part of the Casa Linda Acres 460 subdivision, and the structure was originally built according to assessor records in 1965. So this is the subject property. It is outlined in red here. You do have your Main Street zoning along either side of Main Street. This piece right here is part of the Civic Plaza, so it is a civic zone. And then you have downtown designated zoning along these parcels here, which are adjacent to Church Street. And you also have them along here outside the Main Street zoning boundary. So it's a little different from the typical zoning that you see elsewhere in the city, but nonetheless, again, Main Street zoning. The difference between Main Street zoning and the downtown designation is basically they're using it, still allows mixed use, retail, an assortment of uses, but it utilizes the building layouts and the size compatibility or criteria for buildings that are unique or typical of the urban core. And that's kind of the difference between the two. So this is the property shown in the aerial. You can see that the northern half, almost the northern half of the property, kind of appears as if it's open space, if you will. That's kind of where it gets a little deceiving. This is the building footprint that is in question. Further down is the New America School, which is at issue with this variance request. So the variance is necessary because our recent adoption of cannabis-related regulations requires facilities that will retail cannabis-related products to be 300 feet from where the sale of such product is in terms of the building footprint to the property line of a qualifying school. And in this case, qualifying school is pre-K all the way to 12. Anything for adult education, trade schools, that kind of thing is not part of the criteria that they would have to meet a buffer distance for. The New America School, as indicated, that is the one that the measurement was taken from. The applicant is Health Nautics, LLC, and in talking with the applicant's representative and reading their letter, variance letter, it became evident through that communication that the business is in the business of selling healthcare product. They do a lot of CBD-related compounding of product and sale of product, but they also deal with a little bit, it sounded like a little bit, the applicant's representative could certainly clarify that. but they deal with some product that has THC, and that is the ingredient that requires us to consider this variance request. This is their not so much justification letter, but their letter of intent in terms of the variance. And what I gleaned from that is obviously they are a business that's seeking to provide quality healthcare products in this community. And they do reference some job training programs primarily for areas or communities that are low income and otherwise absent of such programs, job training programs, that kind of thing. This was the site plan that I was given to show the relationship of the building. Again, you can see the open kind of area here. This is the building in question. And so taking the measurement from the building footprint, they're showing it at the building, but the actual demarcation is at the property line. That was where they got the 191.5 feet. I rounded down to afford them a little wiggle room should their measurement be a little bit off. So that's the issue at hand. A couple of photos showing the western facade of the property. Kind of one showing from the New America School looking north, and from the subject property looking south. Public notice and input. Notice was sent to the surrounding properties, and staff received one email of protest to date. I distributed that email, that letter that I received today to you all before the meeting. They oppose the request. It is from the superintendent of the New America School. Generally speaking, you've read it or had a chance to read it, but generally speaking, they find that this use could potentially be a significant distraction for their students that attend the school. So staff recommendation and findings. Staff is recommending approval of the variance request. The findings are that, again, the acreage is 0.35 acres, presently vacant. Any allowance of the variance would help facilitate efforts to occupy buildings and retain businesses in the downtown area. The zoning code, although it doesn't allow manufacturing a product, it does allow some limited compounding of product. And so that zone is appropriate for what we discussed, we being myself and the applicant's representative. Any subsequent building modifications pursuant to the development code or to their business practice will require proper permits, and all such work will be made code compliant at that time. There are many policies and actions within Elevate Las Cruces that support the request. Again, one letter and only one letter of protest has been received. And this request is not contrary to Section 3810K, which is the criteria for decisions, because it does have the potential for spurring economic development at a neighborhood and citywide, wide level due to gross receipts tax generated by the use. So your options this evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, is to vote yes and approve the request as presented. You could vote no and deny, and keep in mind that denial will require separate findings of fact, not presented by staff. And then if you have any conditions you wish to include, you could certainly cite those as part of your motion for approval. And that concludes staff's presentation. I believe the representative is here should you have any further questions.
All right, before we do that, does anybody from the commission have any questions of Mr. Panegas?
I'm just curious, because as we were talking about New America School being less than 300 feet, I believe, I don't know if they still are, but right next door to this proposed property, or a couple doors next to it. It's Big Brothers Big Sisters. I used to volunteer there. They don't usually have kids there, but do they fall under the same, I guess, category than the school does?
If, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Guerrero, if they're not actually carrying out the activities of pre-K through 12, what you would typically see in a school, then no. I think, I'm not quite sure what their operation does or how it operates, but from what I know and what I'm hearing now.
Yeah, it's mainly offices, but I was just curious if there was like the same issue. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Is there anyone else? Does the applicant wish to speak? Are you the applicant?
I'm the representative of the applicant.
Do you wish to speak?
I'll speak.
Sure. Come forward, please.
Good evening, members of the commission.
You'll have to state your name and let me swear you in, please.
Daniel G. Buck.
All right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
As the sole representative of Healthnautics, Inc., and an economic developer by trade, and someone who has worked extensively in the oil field economy of southeastern New Mexico, as well as the northern territory of the state, and trying to amplify the retention of business in the southwestern valley, including Doña Ana County headed to Sunland Park and the El Paso border, the approval of this variance could do a lot for retaining the roadmap and the future of the downtown Las Cruces district, which is on the correct trajectory with what the master plan has in implementation in accord with the city's ordinance. We look forward to bringing a healthy and diverse trio to the downtown area that includes retail, potential jobs, as well as a need for the community in the Mesquite Historic District to be able to get a pedestrian access with limited car use to have prevailing opportunity, as well as opportunities for postgraduates that are inhabiting that district.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? If not, is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak? I see you. Please raise your hands again. 4 people. All right, we'll start over here on the left, and we'll give you 3 minutes each. Please come forward, state your name, and let me swear you in.
My name is Susie Kimball.
All right, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, thank you.
I serve as the Governing Council President for New America School. We're not opposed to this type of business. We're not opposed. We know it's legal. We know it's an economic driver. We believe in this kind of business. We just don't understand how you can easily make a variance on the 300 feet from a school, because that variance is designed to protect our students, to protect our school. And what we're mostly afraid of, traffic in that parking lot. We'll share a parking lot on the back. You're showing the front of the buildings now. Everybody in our school comes in on the other side. So that parking lot is going to be full of people. It's full of our students. We have day school and night school. So we're worried about traffic, we're worried about safety, and we're worried about setting a precedent. If they can get a variance, can everybody else? So how many more shops like this are going to be within this range of the school? That's what we're concerned about. We're not anti this business. We're really not. We know it's legal. We know it's going to happen. We have students at our school from 14 to 21, 22 years old. We feel like this will be a disruption to our school, to our community. We oppose the variance. We don't oppose the business, but we oppose the variance because that's awfully close to our school. And the other part I have to say about that is on the other side of our building is Mesilla Valley Pharmacy. They've told us they're going to seek a variance as well. We share a wall with that place. So how easy is it going to be to get a variance for other people as well? That's what we're concerned about. Thank you.
All right, thank you. There's someone else on the left had want to speak? Again, please state your name and let me swear you in.
My name is Margarita Porter.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Go ahead, thank you.
I'm Margarita Porter, and I'm the superintendent of New America School, Las Cruces. Currently, our building, the owner is FYI, Families Youth Incorporated, and they received the notice, and they didn't give it to us. We inferred with FYI about the notice, and they said they never received it. So that's why we only received, Mr. Berengues only received one letter of protest, because we just found out about it just most recently. And so I represent 200 students, their families, and their parents. And so we, again, as Ms. Susie said, we're not opposed to this. We would just like for you all to please require the 300 feet from a public school, just because it protects us. Once municipal court is open, all of the parking spaces are taken, and we always have to make sure that overflow parking people aren't parking in our parking lot. We have security guards who maintain that. And so we think that this type of company would also create more traffic. We're also concerned about, we already have a lot of vagrants in that area, and so we would like to, again, maintain the safety of our students. There are other real estate available for this type of company, and we would just like to maintain that 300 feet because it's important to our families to know that their children are 300 feet away from this type of company. And so I would just like for the commissioners to please consider that, to maintain the variance with a distance of 300 feet. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think the gentleman on the right side. Again, please state your name and let me swear you in.
Mark Veith.
All right, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do. So just as they were saying, this looks like a case of somebody made a mistake and they want the city to fix it. There's a reason for that 300-foot variance. I see kids walk by that building in droves. By the opposite side there where the parking is at, just lots of kids walking by there. I just don't think that that's a suitable place. They said 300 foot for a reason. I don't think it should be broken. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Wait. Next gentleman, please. Please state your name and let me swear you in.
My name is Jay Wisner.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do affirm.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm a retired juvenile probation officer, and I'm also the pastor located in the church right here, right next to the New American School. You see that building with the 3 crosses on it right there. So I did get a notice. I didn't see on it an email. Maybe I missed that where I could reply to. I got notice of the meeting and wanted to come and reply to that notice. I don't believe we should give any variance either due to the nature of the business. And I have a few things to consider. One is, and see, being a youth advocate, and if anybody from the school, if I misrepresent anything, please correct me.
Just make sure you speak into the microphone so we can hear you.
Okay. As a juvenile probation officer, I have placed youth in that school. They are structured to the point where they can work with kids that are at risk. I don't know if they have any at-risk kids there now. They sure did when I was working with them. I've been retired about 6 years now. And I'm telling you, they do a great job. And I'm here in support of what they're saying, but I also want you to consider a few other things. I have a study from a scholarly journal about the placement of cannabis ads in store locations and their impact, their negative impact on youth. I want to leave that with you if you would like to consider this. I have a pile of studies to look at if you would like. There are some very serious issues here. Once an at-risk youth what are they at risk for? Being system involved. Once they're system involved, a lot of them end up tethered to our criminal justice system for years to come. And I'm speaking, again, as a retired juvenile probation officer. I worked in this city as a juvenile probation officer for 23 years. So I'm telling you, if we have youth that are already at risk and they're in line of sight, right? The back of this building is where the parking lot is, as the lady from this school represented. That's where likely their customers will park. They're not going to go around. There's nowhere to park around front. There's a place for 1 or 2 cars up front. They can't park back there, and they're not going to walk all the way around. They're going to use, as we do, the other side of that building, as the school does, as the entryway to that building, I'm sure. Now, what I'm saying is they're not only less than 300 feet, but they are in line of sight of any youth in that parking lot from that school. I have seen students walk just past, right past the front of that building going home. And so I would ask that you consider not voting for that variance. I think it would be detrimental to our community.
All right, thank you.
Can I leave these with you to look at? Okay. Thank you. The top one is the most relevant one. Yeah, there are all studies about negative impact of marijuana use on youth particularly. I have, in my master's degree, looked up, when you get peer-reviewed
Could you please talk into the microphone, because she's trying to record this.
My apologies. When you get peer-reviewed studies, these aren't just something that the marijuana industry pops out. These are things that our best and brightest minds come up with. Okay, this is just not my opinion alone. These are true academics that put these together. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I think the representative from the applicant wanted to speak again. You've already been sworn in, so go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the commission, as well as members of the general public who raised concerns about our building and the type of business that we're spearheading in the downtown arena. Health Nautics is a very minimally THC-based company. Our products are organic and aimed at aiding high-risk individuals that suffer from PTSD, regrow their inner being and their spirituality, as well as their mental instability. We currently work with veterans at Fort Bliss with our products. They're held in medical professional offices within the community. We also work very closely with people who are vagrant. We have job opportunities that come about, and we work with previously incarcerated individuals to offer job training programs and reinvention into society. As we know, those are heavily stricken populations and minorities that gather in our community with homelessness on the rise. And I think that the school before us is not reconciling the plan that we offer a retention room. When people come in on the south side of our building, we will have a check-in area. It'll be guarded, code locked, and key secured. It will be monitored by an employee who's trained. You'll have to turn in your credentials that state your age, your licensure for buying, and then that's how you gain access to the showroom. It is not as if a student or a minor could walk in and go buy a product off of our shelf. As well, we can operate under hours that coincide more healthfully with the school district. And I'd like to keep in mind that, churches are a wonderful asset to our community. Schools are a wonderful asset to our community. But an age group that struck me from the New America School that was presented was 18 to 22. And by statement of the federal law, 18 is when you can start making decisions for yourself. You're considered an adult. So I don't see how that can play into the ruling for designation on Main Street. Nor can I see how bars that operate just an additional 100 feet from our building till 2 in the morning, who have previously had victims of crime in the evening, play as a unilateral blind spot to the business that we're in trying to help downtown. One of our facets to bring to that building is a multi-use district. Not only will we have retail, but a potential food desert offering for the Mesquite Historic District as well as the Alameda District. And I was appointed last Tuesday for Los Esperanzas, Inc. as the liaison for the 3 districts, Main Street Commercial, the Alameda District, and the Mesquite Historic District. I'll be leading the community watch as well as helping intervene on crime. And I would really like to work closely with our community downtown, that's including the school, the nonprofits, FYI, and the churches.
Do you know what the hours of operation will be?
That can be determined by this meeting with the contingency.
I just have a comment, which it's sort of, I just can't, if this facility had been more than 300 feet away, this meeting would not have been necessary. And your complaints about, let's say it was 320 feet away, you have a big church between the facility and the school. There is a buffer, there is a religious buffer. I know from my friends who have cannabis licenses from the state, go to these facilities, and I know that when they go there, they have told me that when they go in, they have to give them their license, they have to give them their cannabis license, and they're taken in individually. Nobody can go in with them. They buy their product, they come out, they can only pay with cash. You can't even use a credit card. It's very well controlled. So I know what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying. I also hear what people from the school are saying, and the church. I appreciate your comments. These are just my comments. It's very difficult, considering the fact we're only talking about 110 feet here, whatever it is. It's not like we're talking about the building right next door. So if anybody else from the commission has any comments or any questions? Commissioner Vegas.
I think this is for staff. Is the 300-foot variance the same for an establishment that sells alcohol?
What is the 200? Mr. Chair, Commissioner Vega, we believe it's 200 feet. I'd have to look that up, but if memory serves, it's 200 feet.
Just to clarify, it is actually 300 feet. There's some additional requirements for alcohol licensing. It's 300 feet from a school, a church, a daycare, and I believe parks and other public spaces, if I'm correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes, I'm very sensitive to the public, people who are opposing this variance, but I've resided downtown for almost 22 years since I've moved to Las Cruces. I'm very familiar with the downtown area. I've watched it, revitalization over the past decade, and as the applicant stated, there are a number of bars surrounding this area, very close to the new school. Yes, this building is less than the 300 feet required, but them walking by this building, the way this building is going to be established, I don't see how it will have such a negative impact on the students, especially with the statement about the age of the students, 18 to 22 at night. Bars are operating at night, and they're eligible to walk into a bar. So if that's not an issue, I have a difficult time understanding how this building could be an issue.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Kaiser?
The ordinance for this type of establishment and the 300-foot buffer, how would that play out in the totality of the downtown area? In other words, was the intent to exclude these establishments from downtown? Because I assume that New America has been there prior to the establishment of the ordinance. So just curious if there was, what the intent behind the ordinance as it stands now.
Chair, members of the commission, Commissioner Kaiser, there was no intent to exclude these types of uses from downtown. There are some other areas downtown that are far enough away from the New Americas School. The intent behind that was to be consistent essentially with the state regulations regarding the alcohol distancing. That's really what that was about.
Thank you, but it is true that there are establishments that serve alcohol within 300 feet of this New America School, correct?
I can't speak to the exact location of those licenses. I do want to point out that the 300-foot rule is a state rule specifically for alcohol. While we look at that as part of our process, the zoning code actually doesn't speak to 300 feet specifically for alcohol, but because that's not outlined by that was not outlined by the cannabis process, it's something that we added to our codes just for consistency.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, in that case, I guess, any further comment?
Thank you, members of the commission.
All right, thank you. I guess that we're ready for a vote.
I have one last comment, if I may.
Oh, yes, sir, come on. I will allow anyone to speak. Since you've already been sworn in, just please speak right into the microphone.
Yes, my name is Jay Wisner. The children that I saw walk past it was at 4:30 in the afternoon, and if you go any normal school day, I don't believe they meet on Fridays. You go on to other school days, and you'll see children, not adults, walking past the facility. And the issue is, if the people buying right there, whatever the product is, are going to be parking where the children are walking by, there's potential for contact right there. That's the issue that I see. And so I'm just trying to cross some of the T's and dot some of the I's here.
So your comment, you think, is directed at the fact that some of these children maybe get hit by an automobile? Is that what you're saying?
No.
I misunderstood you.
The way children get a hold of drugs and alcohol is adults give it to them. And so there's potential there. And there's potential since you have adults that go to New American School with children as well. And I'm just trying to, I think in the conversations we're comparing apples and oranges, and I'm just trying to line up the apples with the apples and oranges.
Again, it just seems to me, though, that if this was beyond 300 feet, our discussions here this evening would not be...
Well, we wouldn't even have known that they were going to be there. That's for sure. I wasn't aware, and they're well within 300 feet of our church. I wasn't even aware that they're going to be there. We never got a notice that the business was going to be there to begin with until we got this variance notice. Never got anything like that. So that's the only reason I'm here today, is because I didn't know about that until the variance notice.
All right, thank you.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Deb, can you comment on that if necessary?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, in terms of the criteria regarding the distance and variances, the ordinance that was approved does qualify the allowance with the 300-foot buffer. This does not meet that. So therefore, it does allow variances to be considered. Variances, by their very definition, should be justified, have some demonstrable hardship associated with them. That's the typical criteria by which a variance is considered. In terms of development cases such as a variance or zone change or any of the others that we entertain, the code is very clear. We notify property owners as identified by the Doñana County Assessor's Office. And so that's part of the dilemma that New America School faced. The landlord, FYI Inc., received I checked this morning, they are on the mailing list, so they should have received one. If they did not, then something's amiss, but we did send one out. And in terms of churches, they're not part of the criteria for notification for distance consideration.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Commissioner Smith, I have one more comment to make.
Go ahead.
Once again, I stated that I live downtown. I'm very familiar with this area. And just to the south of the New America School is a new pharmacy. Within that new pharmacy, they have over-the-counter medications. And the students at the New America School have much easier access to these over-the-counter medications than they would have accessing the healthcare products that will be sold at this Healthnautics facility. I'm very sensitive to your concerns, but I must state that the access that the students will have, the danger that will be posed to them, is actually much less at this facility than it would be at the pharmacy that's literally right beside your building.
Actually, also, I think it should be noted that you can buy products on the open market that contain CBD, which do not have the amount of THC that you will find in cannabis that is sold in a licensed establishment by the state with a cannabis card. So, all right. Then can I have a motion, please? Someone.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Board Member Guerrero?
So I'm actually going to vote no, and the only reason I'm voting no, I completely agree with this kind of business. I agree with my commissioners as well, but I am concerned about what the school said about the business next door or pharmacy next door, saying they're going to seek a variance as well. So I'm only voting no out of principle because I don't want this to be something that is just expanded to everyone and just be like, oh, we can just go and, they'll let us do whatever we want. So I'm voting no.
Board Member Vega?
I vote yes, based on information shared today, site visit, having some economic growth within the community, and the fact that I do feel that there is some stigma attached to marijuana products that we don't place on alcohol. There's plenty of establishments that are in this downtown area that will continue to come in that will probably seek the same type of license, so I vote yes.
Board Member Smith?
I vote yes based on site visit, staff recommendation, and also just having an understanding of what this type of business could bring to the downtown community. These type of facilities and businesses are being established all over town, and I don't think that the impact that it's going to have to the school, it's going to be of a dangerous level. I think it's going to be minimal.
Board Member Kaiser?
I am concerned with the precedent that's being set here. I wish there was some additional thought put into the buffer distance in the downtown to begin with. That being said, these are the types of uses that are consistent with downtown, and I think it's consistent with Elevate Las Cruces, and I agree with staff's recommendations, so I'm voting yes.
Chair Gordon?
Considering the fact that variances are allowed, and we're only talking about 110 feet here, and if it was the 300 feet or more, this would have been a moot point. I think based on staff recommendations in our discussion and my knowledge of what I think is the business, and it's going to be the business of the future, it'll be a big business here in New Mexico, in Las Cruces, and in the country. If they can legalize a lot of this, I think a lot of the illegal stuff will go away. And I can tell you from my friends how beneficial this is. It's unbelievable how people have been helped through the use of legal cannabis. So also, again, it just brings another business into the downtown area, and I think that there will be no effect. I think that the school should not be worried about this. I don't think it's going to be a problem, and for that reason, I do vote yes.
Approval 4-1. Thank you.
Okay, then we move to the last two items on the agenda, item 8.2 and 8.3, which is the Settler Pass Master Plan and the preliminary plat. Again, like earlier this evening, I want to be able to discuss these items together, but we will vote on them separately. So can I have a vote to do this, please?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we discuss 8.2, items number 8.2 and item number 8.3 together, but they're voted separately.
Commissioner Smith, I second.
Board Member Guerrero?
Yes.
Board Member Vega?
Yes.
Board Member Smith?
Yes.
Board Member Kaiser?
Yes.
Chairman Gordon?
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is John Castillo. I'm a planner with the City of Las Cruces.
John, you're going to have to talk a bit better into that microphone.
Sorry. My name is John. I'm with the City of Las Cruces and planning. Today we're going to discuss the Arroyos at Settlers Pass master plan and the Arroyos at Settlers Pass Phase 1 preliminary plat. Current conditions of the property today, it's located west of Settlers Pass, also known as Longview Lane. It's east of the future extension of Rinconada Boulevard and north of the Rincon Hills subdivision. Right now it's currently located in Council District Number 5. It's approximately 45.98 acres, and it's currently zoned R1B, which is our single-family high-density zoning district. As it sits, it's a vacant, undeveloped tract of land. Here's a aerial map of the property. We can see the zoning map here. The proposal for the master plan is to subdivide the 4 existing parcels into 2 phases. It's going to bring 205 single-family lots, a tract for drainage and utilities, and it's also going to provide a 2-acre park to the City of Las Cruces. As it sits right now, it does meet the requirements of the subdivision code, the design standards, and the 2001 zoning code. It's also supported by Elevate Las Cruces, and it falls under the suburban place type neighborhood. The proposal for the preliminary plat, or Phase 1, is to subdivide the 3 existing parcels, the one near the future extension of Rinconada Boulevard, and the 2 south of the larger one that we can see right here. So these 2 and this one are part of Phase 1. They're going to bring 114 single-family lots and 1 tract for drainage and utilities. This is the master plan as it sits. These are the surrounding zoning designations and parcels. And this is Phase 1 of the Arroyos at Settlers Pass. Public notice was sent out to all relevant agencies. They all have supported this preliminary plat and master plan. Notice was also sent out to surrounding properties. At the time of the presentation was being created, staff did not receive any phone calls or emails regarding questions on the development. This was also sent to our Development Review Committee on January 19th, 2022. They review subdivisions from an infrastructure, utilities, and improvement standpoint. There was discussion, and the DRC did recommend approval of the proposed master plan and Phase 1 of the preliminary plat. Staff recommends approval for the master plan based upon review by relevant city staff. The proposed master plan does comply with the requirements and standards of the City Las Cruces subdivision code. The proposed residential lots comply with all requirements of the 2001 zoning code as amended. The subdivision is also supports and meets the intent of Elevate Las Cruces comprehensive plan. And as stated earlier, it was approved by our Development Review Committee, or DRC. Staff also recommends approval of the preliminary plat based on similar findings. Today's options are to vote yes to approve, vote no to deny, vote yes with conditions, or vote to table. The representative is also here to answer any questions if necessary.
Thank you. Anybody from the commission have any questions? Commissioner Kaiser.
A couple of questions for you. In the department review comments, I did not see active transportation listed there.
So at the time of this, we don't have an actual specific workflow or review process for our active transportation coordinator. In our permitting software, it is something that we are working on, but they have reviewed it. He did provide comments regarding the drainage tracks being used as multimodal system access points, which I did talk to the developer in regards to that, and we have rectified that issue.
Okay, that actually leads right into my second question about that. So in phase one, looking at, oh, yeah, there you go. So I guess, I can't really point, but it would be the northwest corner of that cul-de-sac. Nope, other direction. There you go. How would those residents access that future park that they share a border with?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kaiser, there is, and I know it's a little difficult to see on this one, but there is a tract right here that is dedicated as a 10-foot drainage access tract, also a multimodal tract as well.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I definitely did not see that. Continuing on that line of thought, how would this relate not only to phase two, but also phase three? It appears that there's additional development that's going to happen to the west of that cul-de-sac. Why would there be no connectivity there?
Mr. Martinez, would you like to?
My name is Edward Martinez, representing Zia Engineering and Environmental, and I'm representing the applicant.
All right, let me swear you in then, please. Do you swear affirm that testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, Commissioner Kaiser, Chairman Gordon. The phase 3-4 area right now is optioned and not actually under ownership of the developers. That's the reason it's not part of this application at this time. However, we have done a fairly substantial amount of work in master planning and conceptual design of that area and had quite a few meetings with city staff, not only specific to phase 1 and 2 that's before you now, but also incorporating what we hope to happen within phase 3-4. Within the phase 2 area, just above that cul-de-sac that you pointed out, is where the 2-acre park is proposed to be that is part of this master plan at this time. Within the phase 3-4 area, we're going to be adding an additional acre to that park area. The reason why we don't have direct connectivity between that cul-de-sac and the phase 3 area is actually because of the differential in grades at that point in time. We're going to have actually retaining walls along the west side of that cul-de-sac at that area. However, at the area of the park, we're actually along a ridge line at that point in time, so the grades are much closer in elevation, so we'll be able to tie the acreage of the park together without retaining walls separating the current area that we're under master plan versus the future area.
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, that definitely does not come through in this plan, so I appreciate it. Some other questions on access. So the proposed, I guess, temporary access off of, was it Rincon
Boulevard.
Yeah, so if that's only temporary, at some point it's going to disappear. So how would residents of this neighborhood, this development, access the future commercial development that would be to the northwest of them. It appears that if that temporary access were to leave, they'd be forced to go all the way around to the east and then back around.
Thank you, Commissioner Kaiser, Chairman Gordon. The temporary access that we have now, that we're proposing now, is simply based upon the ownership that they have in place now. The land that they're optioning and the area that we're master planning for future phases 3 and 4 will actually have a permanent access point that will be approximately 300 feet north of where we have the temporary access coming out to Rinconada Boulevard. So they will have direct access to Rinconada Boulevard. The reason why this is a temporary access where we're proposing it now is because of the current geometry of the parcels that they own. The ponding area that's located there now and the existing Park Hill Drive, we can't directly line up that intersection that we're coming out to Park Hill Drive. So because we can't directly line it up under the codes, the codes don't allow a offset intersection with arterials and collectors. So that's the reason why we're going to be doing it as a temporary access now. It'll be a paved access, but it'll be temporary. And then when they move on to phase 3, which will be, we anticipate probably within about a 36-month window, we'll close off that access point. It'll turn into either a lot or ponding, and then we're going to move the permanent access point about 300 feet to the north.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions, I promise.
I've been here all night, so I'm here as long as you want.
Yeah, I'm sure my colleagues are anxious to go home too. Bike lanes, I'm going to ask it. Are they proposed? Where are they proposed? There's currently no bike infrastructure on the boulevard to the southwest. And then on Settlers Pass, it's inadequate bike lanes. This is obviously a big development and is only growing. So I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit more.
Yes, Commissioner Kaiser, Chairman Gordon. I'm a bicyclist myself, so I'm all for bicycling. At the same time, unfortunately, it's always a challenge to try to get everything to fit in. And quite frankly, the codes of the city are not super friendly to trying to get everything to work out at times, to get everything in that we would like. I actually had proposed to do a multimodal pathway within this development, and because challenges with trying to get it worked out, as well as, quite frankly, another part of it, that the pressure that we're dealing with is the market that this development is trying to hit is within like the $200,000 to $300,000 home market. And so because of that, between the pressures of trying to keep costs low, as well as trying to meet city standards, we weren't able to make that multimodal pathway work out within the development. However, we are proposing to pave as part of this, actually as part of phase 1, we're going to be paving the eastern half of Rinconada Boulevard from where it ends now up to our temporary access. I'm hoping that in the detailed design of that, we'll be able to perhaps shrink up the median area within our proposed section and have a multimodal pathway along the eastern side of Rinconada Boulevard. And then as we extend Rinconada Boulevard to the north through phases 3 and 4, when that's developed, we'll extend, hopefully, that multimodal pathway at least to the end of our development.
Well, if that is in fact true, that getting a multimodal pathway built through this development didn't happen because it was too difficult That's deeply disappointing.
It is.
These things aren't hard to do if you prioritize it. And I guarantee you building a bike lane is a heck of a lot cheaper than a 4-lane arterial road when you look at the per mile cost. So that is disappointing to hear, but I'm encouraged to see that you're finding other ways to incorporate that. I hope that we can work with staff to really maximize that opportunity. People who purchase houses for $200,000 deserve bike lanes no more or less than anyone else in this city. It shouldn't be reserved for the people who buy into $1 million developments, $1 million homes. Like this is a basic mode of transportation that should be available for all income levels. My last question, I promise, on the multimodal pathway access that sort of cuts through the development, I also noticed it's intended to serve as stormwater drainage. But I also noticed on one of the maps that was handed to us in our packet that they're proposed to be entirely paved with concrete. I would hope that there's an opportunity here to look at something other than concrete. It is not beneficial in any measure of the term from a stormwater perspective. It only increases impervious surface. So I'd like us to find ways, if it's possible, to incorporate some permeable pavers in those sections. I've seen how some of these things are developed throughout the city, and quite frankly, I don't know who would want to even walk through there. It's just basically an oven in the middle of the summer when you're surrounded by concrete. So I just would kind of open that as, I don't know if that's a question for staff, if that can be something that can be a condition here, but I think that's something that we should seriously look into. There's policies in the comprehensive plan that point to things like this in developments.
Yes, if I may, Commissioner Kaiser, Chairman Gordon. I generally fully agree with your comments. Once again, one of the challenges, however, is a lot of the pavers are not necessarily super friendly for ADA compliance. And we also have to meet ADA compliance within those sections. So that's one of the challenges in trying to get to that to work out.
Yeah, I just encourage you to look a little bit deeper into that because it's possible. I've seen it. It's not a groundbreaking way of developing for stormwater. So something to think about.
Agreed.
Anyone else? I just have one comment. Apparently there is going to be one other exit and enter point on Longview. Is that correct? Another way in and out?
Chairman Gordon, yes, it's on Longview. It's actually designated, I think, as Settlers Pass, but yes, and we're going to be paving the western half of Settlers Pass through this development.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, anybody from the public wish to speak? Sir? Please speak your name.
My name is Bruce Brown.
And let me swear you in, please. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
All right, go ahead. I'll give you 3 minutes.
I own the northeast corner of the end of Settlers Pass, where the solar panels are. So as Settlers Pass goes up, and basically when the pavement ends there, we have a concern. Rincon Hills, all ever 200 plus homes, all exit onto Settlers Pass. From what you're telling me, there's going to be one exit at the bottom and one exit at the top, one on Settlers Pass, one on Rinconada when it's finished. And that's a lot of traffic. So that's one concern I have.
Okay.
Okay. Another concern is at Carson, the development that is north, I think it's called Carson Ranch, or further up, the blacktop is going to have 3 posts because the four-wheelers love it out there. Is there going to be a similar consideration at the end of the blacktop when you do Settlers Pass?
Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Okay, very good. The other thing is there, will the city, is it going to consider patching or filling in the 2 blacktop areas that will now be in line? Because I can guarantee the private owners are not going to pave that third of a mile, let alone with the utilities and all of that.
Well, we can't answer that question. You'll have to direct that to the city.
So one of my questions too is, at the end of Settlers Pass, Longview technically turns left and then again turns north, depending on what plat you're looking at. Are you all going to, once you do the blacktop on Settlers Pass, are you going to continue the blacktop on a minor arterial on Longview? And I think that's all I have. Thank you, sir.
I thank you. If you'd like to reply to that.
Thank you. And if I miss a question, please let me know. Regarding the, where we terminate, we'll be terminating the pavement at our northern property boundary on Settlers Pass. We're actually going to be, at this point in time, the 42.5 feet of what will be the western side of Settlers Pass is currently under ownership of this developer. The developer will be dedicating that right-of-way as part of this platting, and we'll be making the improvements along that section for our quarter mile, basically. Where our land terminates to the north of there, it's currently owned by someone else. We don't have the permission from that individual to extend pavement through his property, nor, quite frankly, other than transition, would there be any requirement or necessity to. So what unfortunately is going to happen, and it happens oftentimes throughout the city, is we are going to end up with a little bit of a hodgepodge of pavement as you're going through Settlers Pass there. You're going to have the fully paved section through Rincon Hills that currently exists. You're going to have the half section on the west side where our development exists. Then it's going to transition back to gravel on the east side, which is where the right-of-way currently exists, for the next approximate, I think it's a quarter mile. And then you're going to get to pavement again farther north, where there's another platted subdivision up there where right-of-way has been dedicated. So you are going to end up with a little bit of a hodgepodge, which unfortunately we don't have control over.
That's one of the problems of development. We understand. I understand that your concern. Hopefully sometime in the future it'll all be done.
So specific to your question, yes, where our pavement ends, there are going to be what we call chevron signage on where the pavement ends on the west side, but we're going to be having a gravel transition back to the east side to get back to where the road is currently.
May I ask one more question, sir? Real quick?
Sure.
If somebody could explain the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, which is which, and 4 that I had not heard according to the paper that was, mailed to my house.
Can you go to the zoning map? That's good. Yes, Chairman Gordon, if I may. Our phase 1 area essentially consists of this area that I'm outlining here, which is the southern 20 acres of this 40-acre parcel, and then a portion of this 6-acre parcel here to get back to Rinconada Boulevard. Phase 2 is this northern 20 acres here of this 40-acre parcel. The land that they currently have option consists of this acreage to the west in this area here. And within that area, it's broken into what we're identifying would be a Phase 3 area, which would essentially, to a large extent, consist of the northern portion of that parcel, and Phase 4 would then consist of this, what I would term this inner area of that parcel area as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, if there is nothing else, I think we are ready for a vote. Remember, we are going to vote on each item, 8.2 and 8.3 separately. So can you please, someone give me a motion for 8.2 for the master plan?
Commissioner Smith, I vote that we vote on 8.1 of this master plan.
Commissioner Guerrero, I'll second it.
Board Member Guerrero?
Yes, based on drive-by, or site drive, and recommendations from staff.
Board Member Vega?
I vote yes based on staff recommendation.
Board Member Smith?
I vote yes, based on staff recommendation also.
Board Member Kaiser?
Voting yes based on staff recommendation, consistency with Elevate Las Cruces, though I do encourage the applicant and staff to work on some of the issues that were raised here.
Chair Gordon?
I vote yes based on staff recommendations and consistent with Elevate Las Cruces.
Approval 5-0. Thank you.
All right, then now I need a motion on the item 8.3, which is the preliminary plat.
Yeah, Commissioner Guerrero, I'll move for approval of 8.3.
I second.
Board Member Guerrero?
Yes, based on the same reasons for the previous vote.
Board Member Vega?
I vote yes based on staff recommendation.
Board Member Smith?
I vote yes, based on staff recommendation.
Board Member Kaiser?
Yes, based on staff recommendation, and once again, encourage staff to work with the applicant on the issues raised here.
Chair Gordon?
I vote yes based on staff recommendation.
Approval 5-0. Thank you.
All right, then that takes care of all the items on the agenda. We are now looking at, did anybody on the commission have any comments this evening? If not, how about staff announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission. Larry Nichols for the record. I just have one comment to make. It's really an upcoming notice for you. There's going to be a presentation on the to the City Council on the recent census that was taken. It'll be a census report, and if you get, we'll make sure that you get the dates for that so that you can listen for that. Reason being is a lot of that information in that census has a direct bearing on items that come before the commission here in the planning. And I think it's very interesting, some of the metrics that we found in there. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
All right, then I'd like to get a motion to adjourn. It is now, I guess, 8:45.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I will second that.
We're adjourned. Thank you.